Okay, so now what I want to show you is how to create a pocket in V-Carve to actually rough out the cavity for the injection mold. And so in your instructions, you can kind of see that it tells you to use a .375 or 3/8 sem mill set as tool 2 to clear out a cavity pocket based on your design for the plastic to fill. So you're going to have to know your design by this point so you know if you want a square pocket or a round pocket or whatever the case is. And so I'm just going to show you how to create that real quick. And so if I come over to V-Carve and I have my blank set up, basically what I want to do is I want to create a pocket somewhere in the middle. Now keep in mind, if you think about where we're coming from here and we take a look at the actual final product, our pocket can't go all the way to the edges because we're going to have a couple of holes put in through there. So it's got to stay within this area, kind of in the center. So same thing here, you can kind of see that I have these holes. So I could have expanded a little bit more, but I have to stay clear of those by a decent amount. And so over here, basically it's telling me, okay, I want to make that pocket. So when I go into V-Carve, what I want to do is I want to give it a shape. And so let's say I want to make a rectangular pocket. Okay, so I'm going to draw a rectangle. And right now it's going to ask me for an anchor point, meaning where is this rectangle going to start from? And then you can put an X and Y location. You can put a radius corner on there. What I'm mostly concerned about at this point is the size. So I have a 3.5 inch wide piece. So maybe my cavity is going to be 2.5. That'll give me 1/2 inch on either side. And I can play around with that a little bit later. Okay, so I have 2.5, and then maybe my height is going to be only about 1.75 because I want to have room for that sprue and gate as well as some material on both sides. So I create that. Now, right now it's square. What you have to keep in mind is with a round cutter, like an end mill, these are never going to be square. It's always going to be radiused. And so if you want to just make it radiused, you can actually do radiused external right from here. And you can set it as a 1/4 inch radius. In this case, since we're using a 3/8 sem mill, you can't really do a 1/4 inch. You're going to do a .375 radius. So let's say that's what I wanted. So now it's going to, it created another one on top of it. So I can just select that one. And then I just hit the delete button to get rid of anything, not the backspace, but delete. So now I have this shape right here. But what I really want is this shape to be centered in my mold. And now I can double click it and you'll notice I can move it around. If I want to put it here, I can put it down here. I could actually change the size of it. So if I wanted it this big, like say I realize that it's a little too big or too small, I can always drag it to an appropriate size right there. If you just go over here to undo, you can always go back, you can go forward, you can edit undo, or if you're like me, I like to just do Control Z if I want to undo. But for right now, maybe I want to keep this size right about here. Okay, so the shape of my pocket for my cavity is going to be like this. And so that's going to give me a little bit of room on this side for a hole, and then some gate and sprue up here, and then just some material left over here. If I want, I can make it a little bit longer. But now let's say I want this thing centered right in my mold. Okay, so I come over here and I come to my Align Objects menu. Really what you want to look at is I have a bunch of different operations I can do. These are my file operations up here, like new, save, open, import an image, things like that. My control, my view, I can zoom, zoom out, zoom in. I can pan it around. Okay, over here I can create shapes. They're called vectors. Anything we carve has to be what's called a vector. I can edit my vector. So once I have it created, let's say I wanted to, highlight this, I would come over here and highlight. All right, I could select it. I'll explain more of these more in depth a little bit later. But really what I want to do is align my object. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to center in the material. Now that's okay, except I got to think about the overall shape of my project. And maybe in this case, I want it more towards the bottom, because if I go and look at where my sprue is, I want to have some room to have the injection happen. So in this case, I'm actually going to drag it down a little bit. Maybe that's how I want it, up and down. But I can always go and just center left and right and keep it centered in the x-axis. So right now, I'm going to leave this alone. I'm going to kind of see how it goes. And so what I want to do at this point is I want to actually create a pocket for it to go. Because right now I've just drawn a shape. But let's say I want to really create a pocket. So in that case, anytime you want to actually cut something in the program and then have it generate into a code for the CNC, you come over to the toolpaths menu. Now, when you hit the toolpaths menu, you're going to have a toolpath list of all the different operations. Right now I have none because I haven't assigned anything. And so if I take a look down here, I have a bunch of different toolpaths I can create. Now, right here, setup material, I've already done that, but that would kind of tell me, all right, I know it's this thick, which I already set up in the beginning. I could set my retract so it'll come above to a safe height, but that's already set. So I don't really need that right now. I can do an engraving toolpath, which you guys will do coming up. I can do a profile toolpath, which you guys will use in other projects where you actually cut around the outside of this shape or around the inside of this shape, but you're not actually clearing it away like we're going to do right now for a cavity. So in our case, you can also do drilling, you can do some texturing, text, quick engraving, things like that. But really right now I want to do a pocket. And so I'm going to hit pocket. And once you select a toolpath, it's going to come up with a menu. Just like when we set up the material before, you're going to go from top to bottom. And so right now my start depth, I'm going to go ahead and say is 0 inches because I'm going to start right at the top of the part. Now my cut depth, I do want to change or make sure that it's good. Now our cavity is only going to be about 1/8 of an inch thick. 1/8 of an inch is 0.125. So that's how far down you're going to go. And so then if I come down a little bit further, I could change this. I could go 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch, but we're going to keep it relatively thin so that the plastic has a better chance of filling up the entire cavity. And so now we're going to go ahead and select our tool. You can see right now there's an end mill, but it's a 1/2 inch end mill, and we're going to use a 3/8. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select an end mill. So what I want to do right here is I want to come up top and I can actually look over here and see if there's one that's already made for me. And so if I look down, I'm looking for end mills. So right here I have V-bits, I have an end mill, I have a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch. I can come down a little bit further. I could take a look over here. Okay, I don't really see a 3/8 end mill. So in that case, what I have to do is I actually have to create a new. And so I'm going to go right ahead and I'm going to create new. I'm going to select an end mill. Now in this case, I'm going to tell the diameter is 0.375. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and my pass depth, it says it's 1/8 of an inch. That means how much it will take at one time. Now that's going to be too much for me. If you guys remember from everything we've done, I'm only going to take 50 thousandths of an inch right away at once. Now if we come down here, you're going to see the speeds and feeds that you guys should start to be familiar with. And so right now it's set at 12,000 RPM, which I'll tell you immediately is too fast because our machines can only go 6,000 RPM. But if you guys use your calculator from the G-Wizard, I can come right over here. If you just select mini mill, feeds and speeds menu, Haas mini mill now instead of the lathe, aluminum material. Okay, we're using a high-speed steel end mill. And basically I tell it the diameter. Okay, and once I put in, so let's say I started off at 0.5, I'm going to change it to 0.375, and you're going to see a bunch of different things happen down here. So when I hit down, it changes all these parameters. What I'm mostly concerned about is my RPM and my feed rate. Now you may be set at a more aggressive cut. We're going to keep it a little bit more conservative. So I want you to go to where it says a finish, and it's going to tell me that I should set my RPM to 5226 and my feed rate to 18.06. And so I'm going to go back to my program and I'm going to put that in. Now 5226, I can just go ahead and say 5,500 if I want. Just round up. A couple hundred RPM doesn't make a difference. My feed rate is going to be 20, okay, because over here it told me that I should have 18. I bumped up my RPM just a little bit, so 20 inches a minute is fine. I'm also going to change my plunge to only 20, meaning how fast it'll go down. I want to make sure this is set at inches per minute. Okay, that's the correct setting for our machines. And now as far as the tool number goes, if you remember, if you read, it'll tell you that we're going to use our 3/8 end mill set as tool 2 right here. And so I'm going to go ahead and set that as tool number 2. And so now I can hit OK. And now when I look over on my tool path, it's going to say, okay, 0.375 inches. I'm good there. If I were to edit this, it would have all the parameters I just set. Okay, so I'm still good there. Now I come in over here. Most of this is going to be pretty good. We're going to leave it as an offset path. You can do raster where it goes back and forth, but not for this type of shape. Okay, now right now I just have to calculate. Anytime you come back and change, because sometimes you'll come in and edit this if you want to change some things, you have to calculate the tool path. And so in this case, I'm going to change the name to cavity. because that's what it's going to be, and I'm going to calculate. And now it brings up a preview right here of the actual toolpath and what it may look like. However, if I go back into my toolpath tab, it's now come to a preview menu, and I can actually select my cavity toolpath, which is now up here since I created it, and I can preview the toolpath, and it actually shows me what it's going to do, and it's going to cut that pocket out in 50 thousandths increments until it gets to 0.125. And so it's showing me that simulation right now. Okay, and so right there, I can take a look. I can see that it's cut out that shape for me. Everything's good. At this point, it would be a good idea to save. So I've already saved it, so I just hit save. It automatically saves. And now I can go back and start to work on my next features. So I do my cavity, my simulate it in the 3D view, and now I have to come back and draw my next stuff in the drawing view.